Hi again. Here is part 2. I'm still in the introduction. So we were talking about Celtic and the relations with Chukchi Kamchatkan. So it was all under the Eurasian effect. So Eurasian he calls Dravidian, Sino-Tibetan, Thai Kadai, Japanese Ainu, Daistani, Yeniseian, Austro-Asiatic, and Austronesian languages. And he also places Kartvelian, Basque, and the Burushaski languages into Eurasian influences. Now, I have to say that Dravidian, Tibetan, Japanese, the Ainu, Daistan, even Yeniseian, and Austro-Asiatic and Austronesian languages, most probably even the Austro-Asiatic and Austronesian languages, they must have had an agglutinative language, or they must be speaking agglutinative languages. Because if you look at, I'm not sure about Sino-Tibetan, but I think Sino-Tibetan has a subject, object, verb order. Dravidian is agglutinative. I'm not sure about Thai Kadai, but Japanese, Ainu, Daistan, even Yeniseian. So Yeniseian actually is a mixture. It also has prefixes, but it is an agglutinative language. It has subject, object, verb structure like Turkish. I'm not sure about the Austro-Asiatic and Austronesian languages, but most of the languages that are mentioned here are agglutinative. So what Indo-European actually has its roots are the ancient North Eurasians and their agglutinative language. That's what I think. Most probably, as I said, it was centered in the Altai region and in Central Asia. And from there, all these agglutinative languages spread. So I'm talking about most probably 20,000 years ago or something. And this is why Basque and also other European languages that have that effect, like Basque, most probably Irish, also has a certain different structure, which is also Welsh. They are not Indo-European languages actually. So Basque has agglutination, and I strongly think that it has something to do with the Caucasian Nadene hypothesis, and maybe it can be traced back to Ane, the ancient North Eurasians. I heard that Burushaski is a kind of Turkic language, which is spoken in the area of, God, where is it? I think it is a part of Afghanistan or Pakistan where they speak this language. They are Turkic. That's what I heard. But people call them names. I mean, they don't want to refer it to the Turks in the region. So anyway, okay, of course, the Gimbutas theory is now disputed. And the theory of the Kurgans, actually, they are not Russians, they are not stemming from Europe. They come from the Turks. Kurgan is a Turkish word. It is a Turkic word because if you look at the word structure, you can name it. Kurgan, Yorgan, all these names, they are Turkish rooted. They have their roots in Turkish. You can name lots of names like this. Similar to this, they can rhyme, and I can find tens of hundreds of names like this. So just to name one. So, okay, the author here traces some archaic European languages to Dravidian and the Caucasian languages. If Dravidian and Caucasian languages are related, and if he thinks that the archaic European languages are related, there must have been an ancestor language which was agglutinative, because European languages, they later formed into subject, verb, object. And I must say that this was most probably the Semitic effect, which started in Iran. I mean, not the structure that changed, but the Semitic effect taking Arabic words. But the structure that changed was, I think, mostly in Greece, in Old Greek. Most probably the structure was subject, verb, object, and that's how it entered the European world. I once watched a video where they compared Old Greek and Persian, and they found lots of similarities. So also, we can say then that the European languages were very much affected by Asia. That's what I can say. I'm not dividing the languages here. I only say that Asia served a lot to the European world. So here it goes on with the Kurgans. I'm skipping the things that I don't agree with. Okay, there was a part, I don't know where it was, but it talked about that Kurgans entered Europe and that Europe started, that it was developed in Europe and that the Kurgans and the Germans and certain European people had their graves like Kurgans. So I must disagree with this because the Germans, they never had Kurgans in their in their culture. Germans, it talks about the DNA here, but the Kurgans, they are only found in Eastern Europe. How did it come to Eastern Europe? It came to Eastern Europe by the Turkic tribes, by the Avars, by the Kuman Kipchaks, by the ancestors of them. It was most probably developed by the Kazakhs, and went on, entered Europe, but not Central Europe. If it entered Central Europe, it was definitely by the Avars, by the Turkic Avars, and definitely not the Germans, because the Germans, they have their DNA from the Huns. That means that they mixed with the Hungarians in the medieval times because they wanted to mix with them. They fought the Huns for hundreds of years, and that's why they have their DNA together. I mean, connected with Hungarians. Other than that, they don't have any connection to the Kurgans or to the culture that is Eastern European. They are completely different. But I can say, if there are some from the Germans that have arrived from Central Asia, which they say, okay, they came from the Yamnaya, okay? So, okay, I can accept that maybe they went further to Central Europe, leaving Hungary behind. Okay, and there are actually Habsburg and Hungary. It divided in the First World War, and there was a part of Germany which was taken from Czechoslovakia and given to Germany. So here, the Sudeten Germans, they actually were Germanized. They were not German themselves. Later they became German, and most of these Germans, or most of these Sudeten Germans, they are actually Germanized Hungarians. That's what I can say. So most probably their DNA can be Central Asian, stemming from Central Asia, like the Huns. So, but other than that, I wouldn't say that they came from, the Kurgan culture. The Germans have no Kurgan culture. Okay, why Ukraine? Why do Ukraine have Kurgans? Because of the Tatars. There are, I would say, I don't want to give a number, but the Tatars introduced the Kurgan culture into Europe. So, here it talks about migrations here. Yes, and here I disagree with this part here, because it says here the Germans, Balts, Slavs, Celts, Italics, Illyrians, and Phrygians, they all come from the Kurgan culture. I disagree with this. Definitely it's not that way. Yeah, so here actually he gives false information. And the Indo-Iranians, they definitely don't know the Kurgan culture. They must have, okay, I would say, okay, they mixed with the Scythians, that's right, because there were West Scythians and East Scythians, and they both went into Europe, that part, and the predecessors of the Huns, etc. But actually, Iran has a different structure. regarding its customs. It is a bit close to the Turanian culture, but if you want to talk about the Kurgan culture, you have to talk about the Turan. So I'm skipping this part because I don't agree, as I said, and I explained it. So I'm also skipping that part because it talks about the Kurganization, which I don't agree with. He's explaining it in a very, very ill way. It is definitely not the Kurgans that are buried the same way. So they might be tumulus, or they might be graves, but definitely not Kurgans. You know, Hallstatt and Urnfield, etc., they were actually different cultures. They were not. There were no Kurgan cultures there. I'm skipping also the Baden part here. Okay, I'm continuing from Çatalhöyük. So this author also says that Dravidians were at Çatalhöyük and Göbekli Tepe. Well, first of all, it was not the Dravidians who were in Çatalhöyük. I think it was one part of Central Asia that came to Çatalhöyük and mixed with the locals, because these ancient goddesses, etc., they were actually present in the ancient North Eurasians culture. So if you look at the ancient North Eurasians culture and the goddesses, they are the same culture. They come from Siberia, and they continued in Çatalhöyük. Çatalhöyük is female dominated. So the Dravidian culture didn't have this. The Indian culture didn't have this. They took it later from the proto-Turks. And when we look at Göbekli Tepe, it can be possible that Dravidians went there, because Göbekli Tepe was closer to the Hindu Kush area and India. So there might have been connections with the Dravidians and with the ancient Indians there, and one tribe might have joined Göbekli Tepe. Why do I say this? Because I have seen some body paintings of Dravidians, and I saw the carving of in Göbekli Tepe, and it was the same H symbol that was carved and what was painted on the body. So, which definitely means we are from the same origin. So, if this was in Göbekli Tepe, and if that man still is painting himself in that color on the body, this is definitely meaning we are from the same culture, or I'm from the same culture, or I'm a descendant from there, or I went there, something like that. So there are connections, definitely. It can be possible that ancient Dravidians, not all of them, but one part went to Göbekli Tepe, but Göbekli Tepe didn't only have one tribe there. Definitely there were dark phenotypes. There were phenotypes like the Dravidians, and there were also the ancient North Eurasian types, which are the Siberian types. Because if you look at the huge statues found there, there were definitely faces resembling the Siberian type. I mean, which looked like the ancient North Eurasians, or the ancient North Siberians, or the ancient Siberians. So, and it is proven that Göbekli Tepe had connections with the Altai. They had connections with Siberia, ancient Siberia. So definitely the proto form of the proto-Turks went there, and most probably some gene flow which formed later some parts of the Turkish civilization in Anatolia was actually rooted in Göbekli Tepe. That's what I think. So here again it goes on with the Celtic language. I haven't researched the Celtic language, but I think it's different from English, and I think it's agglutinative. So there might be a connection with Siberia, yeah. I mean, but I'm not sure that it stems from the Cimmerians. So also, I don't agree with this author that the Cimmerians were Dravidians, etc. So Cimmerians, I heard that they are connected to the Turks. They are from the Altai. That's what I know. The Sarmatians, the Cimmerians, the Scythians, they all are connected. That's what I know. And the Scythians, so does Barry Canliff explain, the Scythians taught the Celts how to fight, and they were actually the shapers of the Celts. And also the Carpathian Mountains, etc., they have to do with the Turks. So the Balkans also, the Bulgarians, they are all Turks. So this is strange. The author connects Old Bulgarian to Slavic and Sanskrit. Oh God, what a connection. This is not true. Old Bulgarian is Western Turkic. I'm correcting the false statements here. I'm so sorry. I have to do this because he gives wrong information. It has nothing to do with Sanskrit. Sanskrit is, I think, the oldest form of the Indian language. There might be effects in Sumerian, of course, but not as much as in Hungarian, in Chuvash, and in Turkish. There are interesting theories here. One person called De Paniagua stated that the Celts and the Veneti, they were a mixture of Indians and the Altai people. That's interesting. And here our author talked about some vocabulary which was Dravidian, he says. It is not only in Dravidian, you can also see this in Turkish. In the Turkic languages, kara means black. Also, some authors here stated that, that's interesting, Dravidian migrants, they had their first homeland in Iran, and then the Indus Valley. And then it says they migrated to central Siberia and they mixed with the people in the steppes. This is what West Bernard said. I mean, sorry, not West Bernard, I'm sorry. That's what Bernard said. But that's interesting. Do I agree with this? I don't think Dravidians were nomads. I think they were more Neolithic people who dealt with, like the Indians and the Chinese, who were more settled people. They were not that active horse riders and very active people, nomadic people. Surely the people mixed, but the people of the Central Asian communities mixed. Central Asian Proto-Turks, the Turkic tribes, the Proto-Turks, and Central Siberian tribes, tens of thousands of years ago, they were the nomads, and they mixed with the Dravidians, with the Indians, and with they came to the Indus Valley, they went to Iran, they mixed with the local people. That's why there are so many descendants of Indians, Dravidians. That's why there are so many mixtures of Turkic people in Central Asia and DNA stuff, especially in Iran. You find the mixture of these Turks. And it is not right to say that the Istan ending areas of Iran are Iranic, because what you have in Turkestan, Uzbekistan, even Tajikistan, it is actually Turkic. I know that Tajiks don't want to be considered Turkic, but I looked at their language and it is very close to the Uzbek language. So the Uzbeks are Turks. I don't know why they want to be considered Iranians, because there are also millions of Turks living. That there are millions of Turks living in Iran. So it is actually a mixture of. So Iran is actually a mixture of Persians who were under Semitic effect, who mixed with Arabs, with Russians, etc., and the Turks. The Turks, yeah, they also mixed with Russians, etc., but they kept their language. So Iran and Persia had some ancestry where they took most probably Proto-Russians and Proto-Russian speaking communities into their land, and that's how Persian spread. So it changed the vocabulary actually of the area. The structure stayed the same, but the vocabulary slightly changed. And then after that, Semitic effect was very heavily seen in Persia. And that's how prefixes got into the language. So here we have the migrations, the genetic and archaeological studies. So here it gives actually the map. So do I agree with the map? Well, still out of Africa. I have to say that I don't agree with out of Africa hypothesis. I think there were several, I mean, like the apes, like other animals, like other creatures and beings, on several parts of the planet, there were parallel archaic humans. Okay, modern human came out of Africa. I agree with that. The Neanderthal had never been in Africa. So how can he come out of Africa if he had never been in Africa? Also, most probably, the Australian archaic types, they most probably spread from there. I mean, maybe there was land here in this area, and the Australoids, they went here and came into these areas, most probably. Okay, the Semitic form spread from this area, okay, and went to Persia. Also, the most archaic forms of the Jewish people, they also went to Central Asia. And that's most probably how they mixed with the local people. Because I think Persian had Semitic influences. It can be possible that also Jews went into Persia and Russia, and from there they mixed with the local people, the Jews, the archaic Jews. So Semitic influences started actually here, in the Turan. Actually, this was all Turan. It was not Semitic at all, But here you start to see Semitic influences. It didn't change the structure of the language, but it started to shape Greece, for example, and the other European. It started to shape the vocabulary, for example. All right. So what I don't agree with is this part, the Dravidian part, right? It didn't start out of this part, this area. It started here, Siberia. And I even didn't know that the Chechen language was agglutinative, by the way. So this is very interesting. Now, if you have a look, here is somewhere, where is it? Central Asia. Where is Central Asia? God, anyway. So if you look at Central Asia, it's here somewhere, there. So it must have been here, because look at the Malta boy. Look at the Tarim mummies, right? And the other bodies that were found there, the mummies that were found there, they are ancient. They are so ancient. And look at the American Indians who had connections with Central Asia and East Asia, of course. So they must have spread also to India and South Asia in order to, they had all agglutinative languages. I mean, it's, I don't think it spread from here, the agglutination. Because if it had spread from here, it is such a close area to affect this part of the Arabian Peninsula, right? So here, this part is Semitic. This part is Semitic. I mean, here there is an agglutinative part, which might have taken the language root into this place, one haplogroup. Okay, Central Asia, as I said, was agglutinative. The Chechen language is agglutinative. Uyghurs are Turks. I know from one branch of Chinese that is agglutinative, but the other form of Chinese has a different vocabulary structure, but the sentence structure is subject, object, verb. So it has actually subject, object, verb, like Persia. So it is actually stretching from one part of the globe until the other. And here it changes. In Greece it changes. So actually the subject, verb, object structure is not that much. I mean, you only see it in parts of Europe. That's it. And why do Europeans, why does the West want to include Hittite and Persian into its family? I mean, they don't look at the structure. They only look at the vocabulary. I mean, one language can have your vocabulary, but don't you think that you have to look at the structure as well? Not only the vocabulary counts, also the structure. I think the structure is more important than vocabulary. And if you look at the structure, if you look at the subject, object, verb structure, you can all find it here. You can find it in Japanese. You can find it in South Asia, in parts of South Asia, in Pakistan, in all Central Asia, all parts of Central Asia. except Russia. I mean, you don't find it in Russian because Russian is subject, verb, object. But Russian also has lots of Turkish words in it. That's what I know from my students. They are learning Russian. So the Altai was definitely the place where they took the agglutinative languages to the world until Finland, and most probably these parts were also agglutinative at the very beginning, because we have Basque. Why is Basque agglutinative? Why is, I'm not sure of Irish, etc. Why are some parts of England agglutinative? Let's have a look at this part of Europe. This part of Europe was under the ice sheet when here there were civilizations, when here there was a heavy interconnection of communities and tribes, Turkic tribes. And also, if you have a look into Europe, Europe has been much under the effect of the Turkic tribes. It is not mentioned here, but if you look at the Avars, the Alans, the Caucasians are even said to be Turk-related. So the Tatars, especially, if the Tatars are here, if the Kupchaks, Kumans, most of the Turkics are here, then why don't you want to seek Turkic roots in your language? So definitely the common vocabulary that Indo-European has to do with the Turkic stemming words. It has to come from the Altai, not from Dravidian. And if you have a look at also, it is not given here, but if you have a look at North America and South America, one branch went into the Americas. It is not shown here, but from the Bering Strait. They also have agglutinative languages. Most of the agglutinative languages are in the Native Americans. And Native Americans have common vocabulary with Turkic vocabulary. So why don't you want to accept the fact that actually ancient North Eurasians had most of the words, common words, and that ancient North Eurasians had an agglutinative language, and these communities that went to those, because it has so many common things here. If you look at the DNA, they say, okay, ancient North Eurasians, they spread DNA here and there. So these are the same areas that has agglutinative languages. These are most of the areas that are Proto-Turkic, that have connections with Turkic people. These are the Turkic tribes. These are the branches of Turks. These are communities of Turks. So this is a fact. We are definitely related, which regards the proto form. Yeah, and here it is mentioned Okay, Anatolia, certain parts of Anatolia, the Zagros Mountains, Mesopotamia, Anatolia, etc. The Balkans, okay, they have these ancient cultures, right? I'm not referring to the information there, because definitely they will also look at the Dravidian effect of it. I don't think Çatalhöyük was that Dravidian. Okay, it talks about haplogroups here, the spreading of haplogroups. If you look at the haplogroup G, 2A, R1A, and R1B, it shows that these regions were also Proto-Turkic. Okay. It's been said that this Fertile Crescent here, Göbekli Tepe and the Fertile Crescent, was once inhabited by Siberian and Uralic, Siberian, Altaic peoples coming from Inner Asia, together with the mixture of some Indian and Dravidian parts, most probably from here, right? So this part actually was also inhabited by the Amerindians, right? Because they are Asian, they are Central Asian, East Asian. So their haplogroups also came here. They mixed with the local community. And Konya Plain is not that far away, actually. So the same community was definitely in Çatalhöyük, right? That's what I think. And most probably they also affected the Balkan. So what I want to say is that the ancient populations forming this community went into Anatolia as well. And they formed the civilizations of the Sumers. So the Sumers were actually an Altaic, Uralic branch tribe, having come here, settled here. And from there, they formed the Hittites. So the continuation of the Sumerians were the Hittites. So all these communities, all these cultures, they formed the Balkans, they formed Greece, they formed Europe. Before, of course, the Balkans and these parts were Turkified. I sometimes think that the ancestors, the Proto-Turks, some tribes, they came down in the Sumerian time to form the culture here. And because they formed this culture here, they also affected Iran. So some part of Iran was not Persian at all. It was definitely Turanic. And from that time, from that time on, also the Hittites had Proto-Turkic DNA, the Sumerians had Proto-Turkic DNA, which came here before we went to Anatolia. So we are actually the continuation of these Proto-Turks from different areas, from different time lapses, but the continuation of the Sumerians and the Hittites, etc. Yes, here we have, of course, a Semitic effect, which we can see in the language of the Hittites, right? Not that much in Sumerian, but more in the Hittite language. Because if you think there was a Semitic effect coming from here, coming from the Levant, coming from the proto-Israelis, or let's say the proto-Semitic communities here. And they most probably were dominant here. And because they were dominant, they affected the language and the communities, of course. And they went into the Iran and they changed the vocabulary there because of this mixture, this cultural mixture, let's say, or the dominance of the culture later on. I wouldn't say that the Balkan, West Europe, etc., was under the effect of Dravidian, but most probably it was under the effect of Semitic languages, of the Semitic tribes, which we can see in Italy, in Greece, in parts of the Mediterranean, because there are all, very, very dark, very black types. I mean, they have dark hair, they have darker skin, olive skin, and dark eyes, etc. So a very Semitic look, actually. Most probably because of the mixture of these communities, Semitic communities. I wouldn't say Dravidian, because Dravidian is agglutinative. But the language in Europe changed. It changed into subject, verb, object. So a very, very strong effect by the Semitic peoples who went into Europe. That's what I would say. So I'm actually skipping this part, and I want to continue with the conclusion, because I don't agree with some years here and some information here. But I have to mention the haplogroups here and how they were formed. So here we see haplogroup R, which is the continuation of P. And ancient North Eurasians had the haplogroup, they had the P haplogroup, which later had the continuation of R1a and R1b. So if you look at R1b, it is again in Siberia, and it formed 22,000 years ago. And it says here, it went west. I also think that it also went into this part of the region. It went into Persia and India, down here, because this was Scythian, Proto-Scythian and Proto-Turkic, Altaic part. And here we have the Tarim mummies, etc., right? So it must be, I know the Tarim mummies aren't that old, but how did these blonde people come here? They were blonde. And you see blonde people here in among Turks as well. So here, there must be a line here somewhere. I mean, coming down. Because in India, you have also a mixture of people who are blonde, etc., who have green eyes, blue eyes, etc. So it is not wrong. I mean, it is not right to say that these people, they went here and they didn't have anything here. So, okay, if these went west, all west, there must have been also a part that went also here to these areas, because they spread everywhere. They didn't just go west. So, okay, now we have R1A. I would agree with R1A in this way, but maybe we can say that the Tara mummies had haplogroup R1A because they went from Central Siberia into this place. So here there might have been their ancestors, the Tara mummies, etc. Okay. So, if you have a look at R1A, this reminds me of, look at the Finnish people. Why is there no R1A and R1B in the Finns? That's interesting. Okay, here are the Urals. The Urals are here. Okay. So, R1A, also Turkic land, and Northern Africa, because I know that Northern Africa is not Arab. They don't consider themselves Arabs, so they are not Semitic. There is nothing Semitic in R1A. But how come that Persians have R1A? So if R1A is not Semitic, of course Persians shouldn't consider themselves Semitic then. I mean, because Indo-European is in a way Semitic. It has a Semitic effect. I mean, not Indo-European, but I hate that word, Indo-European. It is not Indo-European. It is the European language, the European languages that changed their sentence structure into subject, verb, object. That's it. Okay, so here you see the subject, verb, object parts. Now, a very interesting sentence here. Kurup et al. Stated that Dravidians, Sumerians, Egyptians, Etruscans, Celts, and Basques had a common origin that had kept Neanderthal genes. In particular, the Basques had a common deficiency of the metabolism and cholesterol causing and genetic deficiencies, spoke and wrote a common Akaro-Dravidian language, and had adopted a similar model of blah 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 society based on the cult of mother goddesses. Now, I partly agree with this, but I don't agree with the part that they spoke an Akkado-Dravidian language. It can be true that there are some connections between Dravidians, Sumerians, Egyptians, Etruscans, Celts, Basques, etc. That they had a common origin, yes. most probably coming from the ancient North Eurasians, this connection. But definitely not Semitic, because there is nothing Semitic here. You see? Sumerian agglutinative. Egyptian, I haven't made a research on that, but Egyptian is considered non-Arabic. They don't consider themselves Arabs. They speak an Arabic language, but they were different. I think they are more Mediterranean than Arab. So Etruscans were also Mediterranean. There is an Italian scholar who claims that the Etruscans are Turks. So I consider them also proto-Turks, because they have connections with the Hungarians. They were proto-Hungarians. They used the common God. What was the alphabet that they used? They used runes. That's what I know. And they were the predecessors of the Latin alphabet. So we can definitely say that the Etruscans, they most probably had a Mediterranean blood mixed with Turks, mixed with Proto-Turks. And yes, that's what I think. And definitely genetic connections with the Altai region, because their language was close to Hungarian, they say, Proto-Hungarian, and they had also genetic connections. They say they have genetic connections with the Hungarians. Most probably also the Sumerians. So Etruscans can be the post communities of the Sumerians. Okay, the mother goddess cult. Now, the mother goddess cult is seen in Anatolia. The mother goddess cult is seen in Siberia. If you have a look at the Malta boy, he was found with the mother goddesses. So if he was that ancient, he must have spread, I mean, not he, but that region, that ancient North Eurasians cult must have been a mother goddess cult, because all these communities that were coming later on, they gave importance to women. They had the agglutinative language. They were rooted. They had a common blood. That's what I can say. But not Akkadian. No. It can be Sumerian, but not Akkadian, because Akkadian was Semitic. Please don't fuse Semitic into agglutinative languages. Has nothing to do with Semitic. Semitic is completely different. So, yes, it's right that the haplogroup H2 was found in Çatalhöyük. That's right. But I'm not sure if H2 belonged to the Dravidians. That's interesting. That haplogroup H2 was found in the first Europeans, it says here, which was present in Gaul, Iberia, Germany, Helvetia, Italy, the Danube, the Balkans, Armenia, Iran, Afghanistan. Okay, I can understand that it was found in Armenia, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India. So they must have been the nomads who went to Europe from Anatolia. Yes, it must have been these people. And they must have also gone to the other direction, towards Asia. Yeah, and also to India, of course, right? Also to India. So they went from Anatolia there, most probably from Çatalhöyük. That's what I think. Okay, now Tocharians. Yes, I don't think Tocharians were Indo-Europeans. I think, okay, I don't like that word, as I said. Tocharians were definitely the continuation of the ancient North Eurasians. That's what I think. They were more situated in the, most probably in the northern Altai, southern Urals, and from there they came towards the Hindu Kush, and most probably they were the ones who formed the Central Asians. But one part of them went towards the south, and it's there that he adopted Semitic influences, most probably, because of the syntax, most probably, or the vocabulary. I mean, they claim that Tocharians were Indo-Europeans, but they might have been affected by Indian vocabulary, of course, and Dravidian vocabulary, maybe. But there is a connection. There is a connection in history between the Indians, the Dravidians, and the Tocharians. So most probably Tocharians were proto-Turks who mixed with Indians and Dravidians, etc. So mostly Indians and also Southern Asian groups, not definitely Indians, but maybe also Tibetans, etc. And Nepalese people, etc., etc., to form a new community who served the western part of Asia, Proto-Turks, Turkmens maybe. Okay, it is talking more about haplogroups here. I'm skipping these. So this is interesting. It is here the haplogroup H, Y DNA, and how it spread. So H2. But I know that H2 was also present in Anatolia, in Çatalhöyük. Why isn't it given here? Because H2 was, maybe it was not Y DNA. Because I know that haplogroup C, but Y haplogroup C was the male dominance in Çatalhöyük, and there were lots of C haplogroups in Çatalhöyük, and they had mitochondrial DNA with H2. So most probably the females were mostly H2, and they had C haplogroup husbands. And that's because this is not included in the group. I mean, in the map, I mean. Okay, now if we look at the map here, it says here migrations from the Indus region. But they are not Indians, actually. I don't think these were Indians who went into these regions. These areas were also inhabited by proto-Turks. If you look at the map, the area, it is also close to the middle of Western and Central Asia, where we find Turkmenistan, that area, close to that area. Okay, the Hindu Kush is also inhabited by lots and lots of Turks. So most probably these were Turkish descendants, the proto-Turks of the Hindu Kush. Most probably they must have been traveling north. That's what I think. That's interesting. Here it talks about the Neolithic farmers in Anatolia who went from 8000 BCE into Europe. Okay? Now, look how many percentages it brought to the British Isles. 20% to the British Isles. That might mean that maybe the Celts or Welsh or the non-speaking, anyway, forget about the language, 30% France, 75% Balkans. And then it says mainly Anatolian, 50%, and Basque. Now, look at Basque. Basque is an agglutinative language. Anatolian, 50%, and then we have the Balkans, 75% the Balkans. You know why I looked at Basque in this way? Because I think maybe Anatolia, 8000 BCE, was already speaking an agglutinative language, which the people took into Europe. That's because Basque is still agglutinative. So Basque, most probably the people and the language of Basque was an agglutinative language from Anatolia, stemming from Anatolia, not from the Caucasus region, or maybe from both regions, because the Caucasus is mainly agglutinative. So if the Caucasus is agglutinative, Anatolia, 8,500 years ago, must have spoken also an agglutinative language, which it took to Europe. So can it be possible that Europe, once upon a time, spoke an agglutinative language and later it changed? Because Britain also has some vocabulary that's is traced back to common, let's say, sentence, or let's say vocabulary structure. There are irregular, for example, plurals in Britain, which have the root in the Uralic Altaic languages. How did it come to Britain? From Anatolia, most probably. Yeah, or from Central Asia. I mean, either of them. I think that in Central Asia, by the time the migrations were taking place from Asia, from Central Asia, and from Anatolia into Europe, the people where migrations took place, the people from those places, from Anatolia and from Central Asia, from Siberia, they were already speaking agglutinative languages. So definitely this was the ancient North Eurasians effect. That's what I think. Here it says something similar, but the author of the PDF mentions that it was Dravidian. No, it wasn't Dravidian. It wasn't. Okay. Here we have more haplogroups and pastoralism. Now, let's look at pastoralism and what I can add here or delete here. It says, Europe's civilization of pastoralism for milk came from the Iranian Zagros Mountains. No, it didn't. And it came from the Caucasus, from 7000 BCE. Okay, it might have come from the Caucasus, that's right, but not from the Zagros Mountains. Zagros was, I don't think that Zagros was already dealing with milk products there. So Caucasus, parts of the Balkans, yes, but Zagros Mountains, no. And Iran, no. Now, again, it says here, from India to the Caucasus, Anatolia, and southern Europe. Forget that part. Rondu supports the thesis by the diffusion of toponyms, van, vand, etc. So the vocabulary there. And then we have Pand, linked to shepherds, cheese making of the Tamil king, Pandyan of the Black Sea. I wouldn't include cheese making to Dravidian and Tamil. I strongly think they dealt more with spices and stuff like that, not with milk products, etc. Not with pastoralism. The pastoralists were the proto-Turks. I agree with the goddesses, right? Because India and the Turks, the Indians and the Turks, they had one common culture in the past. But now dividing these two cultures definitely doesn't serve the Europeans. It doesn't serve the Indians as well, because once upon a time we had a shared history that Indians and the Turks, they had more in common in the past, and they had common values. Most probably it was so with the proto-Turks in that region. There was no distinction in the cultures. There was just connection and intermingling with the communities, etc. So imagine the Sumerians in the region who came from Central Asia. Those Sumerians had contacts with the Indians, with the Dravidians, etc., with South Asia. So they must have formed the common culture of India, because such a rich and how can I say, very open community with the Buddha and the Hindu and the goddesses, etc. It was definitely a Sumerian effect. Yes, and because the Sumerians had lots of contact with the Indians and not Indians but Southern Asia, it thrived. That region, the Hindu Kush, parts of Anatolia, Iran, Central Asia, thrived. So